The program features live coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
The winds are blowing and the blue crystal clear winter sky is in the background. This is Safari Live. Ready. Standing by.
Five, four, three, two, one. You are live, you are live.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another epic edition of Safari Live and this Sunset Safari. Well, we hope it will be an epic edition. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Sebastian, and from the Maasai Mara, hopefully we will have Stef and Senzo joining us a little bit later. Now, it is going to be a windy afternoon, which means that we might have a little bit of trouble finding certain animals, but it is a warm, windy afternoon. It's actually not too cold. I thought it would be a bit cooler, hence me having a jersey, but I might take this jersey off because it's actually a little bit warmer than I first thought. And so maybe we'll see some of the animals coming down for water. So we're going to try and check all our water holes early on, try and see if there's any sign. There was also some hyenas that were calling a little bit earlier. So Ellie is going to be on tracking team and try and see if she can't go and find us where, well, the hyenas and where they actually are. Maybe there's a new den that we'll be lucky enough to try and locate. So that's the plan for this afternoon. Seb would like to see a leopard, so I'm going to try and do my very best to find you a leopard, Seb. Hopefully there will be one lurking somewhere about here. And then a little bit later we do have a teachers conference that is going to be joining us a little bit later. Now remember, this is live, it is interactive, which means that all of you can get hold of us. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, and that's how you will be able to ask us any questions or comments that you may have as we go for the next 3 hours through the African bush. So without further ado, let's start going and seeing what we can find. Now I'm checking a sneaky little road that we like to call Ingwe Alley. Now Ingwe is the local name for a leopard, and well, this is where I found Tingana yesterday. So Tingana was cruising along this little drainage section when we found him yesterday, and so I'm going to try and see if I can't find any signs of a leopard here today. It's not always going to be the case that every single time you drive there that there will be one, but you never know. It's always worth having a little look around. This morning the sort of cards were against us and the leopards all went south and away, and so I'm just hoping for a bit of luck. Now the reason why the leopards like it here and why it got this name is because it was actually around the time when Djuma and Quarantine were younger, and they used to hang around here quite a bit, and the thing is that it's a perfect place for a leopard. You've got a ridge section up on the right which has got lots of nice big trees that are safe points, especially for younger leopards as they were, as well as the fact that you've got thick deep drainage line on your left with a lot of mud wallows. So there's lots of little mud wallows spread around in this area, and now a lot of them have dried, but every now and then you'll find one that's got a little bit of water in it, and that little bit of water is obviously vital for cats to drink at. They like drinking out of smaller water sources because they know they don't have to then deal with the threat of a crocodile, and so that's why they like it here. It is the perfect place for cats to spend time. So we're going to try and see what we have on our Ingwe Alley, and while we do that, I believe Stef has gotten up and running and is getting off with a bang and a variety of animals.
And just like that, you're over 3,500 miles north of where Tristan said goodbye to you now, on a windy day apparently in Djuma, and you're with me, Stefan and Senzo, in the world famous Maasai Mara, and in particular a portion of the Maasai Mara called the Mara Triangle. And surrounded by us is a selection of animals that you'll find at Djuma, just slightly different in every single way. There in the distance we have some zebra and some Topi. That brown antelope that you're seeing is one of the world's fastest antelope. It's Africa's fastest antelope and is rivaled only by the pronghorn deer in North America as being the second fastest antelope on the planet. And there you've got that black and white unmistakable zebra profile. Coming into the foreground, we've got some East African Impala. Slightly different to the Impala where my friend Tristan is busy driving around in that these Impala have 2 growing seasons and are therefore almost in a constant state of a testosterone overload and are a little bit bigger. Their horns are much bigger, their bodies are a little bit bigger than what they would be down there. And then in the foreground, right here close to me, we have a sounder of Warthog, which are very similar in actual fact to those that we find out in Djuma. Isn't it just amazing that we can skip so much distance so quickly and we can show you what we're showing you in 2 almost completely different environments. Now, I'm just as interactive as what Tristan is, so don't forget that you can ask me your questions, and please do ask me your questions, and let's chat about this wonderful technology that is being brought to you from the southern end of Kenya and the northern end, if that makes any sense, to the wildebeest migration. Now, there's a bit of a misconception around wildebeest migrations because the general perception I had when I was growing up was that the wildebeest arrive and they spend a couple of months in the Maasai Mara and then they go away and this place is left absolutely devoid of life. But that isn't true at all. What happens is there's 2 distinct groups of animals. There's those that migrate away and there's those that stay and are sedentary. And there's a lot of animals that stay. I would say many tens of thousands of animals stay. And they do so because the Maasai Mara is, although not as good as the Serengeti, is a very, very good place nutritionally to stay. Not only is the grass good, they have 2 growing seasons, and we don't really have a winter or a dry season here. And so the grass pretty much grows all year round here on the equator, and allows for a lot of herbivores, and those herbivores then attract a lot of predators. The wildebeest, of course, do migrate. They are migratory species, and what they will do is go where the grass is best, and that happens to be in the southern portion of the Serengeti, which is in the northern part of Tanzania, if that makes any sense, and a couple of 100 miles away from here, where volcanic ash and high rainfall and direct sunlight and wide open plains make it possible for wildebeest numbers to explode in dramatic fashion. And that is what we're waiting for right here. We're waiting for the wildebeest to arrive. Those plains started to dry out about a month or 2 ago, and as they started to dry out, there's no permanent water there. The wildebeest started to trickle away from the Serengeti and started to be funneled by the hills in this area, and they will be funneled into this particular portion of Kenya, into this particular portion of the Maasai Mara Game Reserve, and they'll spend 3 or 4 months here enjoying the grass, and as soon as the rain starts over the Serengeti again, they go all the way back south again. And they do this annually, and it's in a cyclical motion. Not all of them go along the same route, but it's roughly circular and a couple of 100 miles in extent. Now, what are we going to do today? We are going to be heading out in that direction over there, far away. Let me just see if I can get my bearings exactly where I want to point. Right there. So let me see if I can get my finger there. There, around about. There is a pride of lioness, and they have with them some cubs, and I'm hoping that I can find them for you before you leave us and the end of the show today. So that is what the plan is today. Oh, James, you've asked me if the Impala, the East African Impala, make the same deep rutting growl that the Impala Djuma make. Absolutely, it is almost identical to the one, and I'm actually hoping that some of these male Impala, this bachelor herd of Impala that you see here, will actually do that. Now, the females are all pregnant, and they're all haremed together, and all being attended by the strongest, biggest male out of the selection of males in this area. The rest of the males will hang around in a group called a bachelor herd. They will not be allowed close to the females, and they will wrestle with one another, the youngsters learning how to fight, and the older, less competitive rams busy giving the youngsters some lessons in fighting. So they complement one another, absolutely. They look after each other. The older rams allowing some security, and then also as their senses start to fail, the younger rams will start to basically look after them. It's not quite that simple, but basically look after them. What you're looking at there is some posturing You got two males of roughly the same size doing some lip smacking at one another, facing each other. What they're doing is they're showing each other their horns. They then turn sideways and profile their bodies, and they tense their muscles, and they try and put their bodies against the skyline. They'll fluff up their tails, and they try and look as big and as intimidating as possible. If the two males are of the same size, they will fight with one another, and you can imagine horns that long and that sharp can inflict the most terrible wounds. And quite often in the rutting season, when those males are making the deep rumbling roar, they will be fighting with each other, and to the death as well. It's not uncommon to have impala with puncture wounds into their chest cavities. Just have a look at that. Isn't that just a magnificent display of male East African impala? All with their muscles tense. It's almost like I suppose a bodybuilding competition. They're all trying to not fight with one another by showing each other how big they are. And there one turns sideways, a bit of lip smacking. Here's some profiling. Now have a look at the tips of his horns. You're looking at the last inch or so of his horns. Male impala that are ready to breed, in other words the prime males, their tips of their horns, the last inch of their horns are parallel to one another. Male impala that are too old to breed, horn tips are facing away from one another, and male impala too young to breed, their horn tips face toward one another. All of them have those ridges, and those ridges are there to stop the horns from sliding past one another when they're wrestling and inflicting unnecessary injury. So those ridges are pressure ridges. The horns lock with one another. The male impala strain and stress and press against each other. Those horns create friction on those ridge edges and basically stop the horns from sliding past one another and letting those absolutely sharp tips slide into a body cavity when it's not absolutely necessary. Of course they can push past that with enough force, and male impala quite often do. What I'm going to do is just freewheel down the hill and see if we can sneak up on these impala a little bit, get them a little bit closer to you. Don't forget, send some questions. Can't only be one question out there that you want to ask. Let's see if we can get some more. Now, why are there so many herbivores on the slopes of these hills? Quite easily to explain. It's because the slopes offer shorter grass and protection from lion. So lion enjoy valley floors, and they do not enjoy the slopes of the hills. And as you can see, we're on the edge of an escarpment here. This escarpment is called the Olololo Escarpment, and is a feature within the Great African Rift Valley. It isn't the valley wall itself, but it's a feature within the Great African Rift Valley. There's a lovely shot there from Senzo on those ridges. You can see those pressure ridges on that old male. You can actually see where they've been rubbed shiny from all the years of wrestling with one another. Old ram that. Alright, I hear my friend Tristan has also got an impala to show you, and so without further ado, you heading all the way south back to Djuma.
Well, we do indeed, Stef, and it's so interesting to have been watching the impala in the Mara as opposed to the impala here in South Africa, and the slight differences that we see between them. Our impala here tend to have much smaller sets of horns than the impala in East Africa. They seem to have much bigger, wider spread horns, but talking to Brent, he says our impalas are often a little bit larger. Now, talking about horns, you can see that male there who's got a horn that's broken, and now chaos has just erupted. So this is this time of the year where there is rutting, and you can see, look at how they're chasing each other. Now this is what happens when too much testosterone is in one place. Is one male just lost his cool, and that triggered everybody into a chase amongst each other, and they were all chasing each other, and I don't think actually anybody really realized who was chasing who there. That was quite cool. But you heard the sound that they were making, those grunts, and it's amazing to hear impala grunt like that. They almost sound like they're part of a lion pride when they make those noises. Doesn't sound at all like these gentle, pretty looking antelope that we see in front of us. Now all of that was just to establish who's really the boss. So they would have chased each other around, and maybe round 2 is going to start. I see another one is busy running here in front. No, it's all quite settled now. I think those that wanted to prove their point did. And that's all because we've just come out of the breeding season, and that's meant that there's been a massive increase in the testosterone of male impalas, and they've really been going at one another, and there's been lots of chasing and pushing each other around and vying for territory, and this is just a spillover from that. Most of the female impalas by now have been mated with, and so there isn't really any need to be chasing each other. And in a situation like this, where there is no females, it really is quite silly that they chase one another around, because ultimately that's how they get killed. The predators are very clever. They know that when these impalas are rutting and snorting and chasing each other, they're not watching what's going on. And so then the predators are able to utilize that to their advantage and try and position themselves that these impalas run straight towards them. Now, Amy, you asking whether, or you thought that the impala rutting was over quite a while ago. Well, Amy, not always. It sometimes can lag a little bit, and what you'll find is that some females come into heat slightly later in the year, and so by the end of May, beginning of June, there still are a few that are being mated with, and that testosterone push that's happened over April, May, and the beginning of June is still lingering now at this time of the year. And so there's still a few temperamental males that are still wound up and still trying to sort of assert themselves, even though the females are no longer really getting into heat and are not really receptive for mating. Battling to get the words out this afternoon. So, George, you say there's such a big difference between the horn sizes here in Mara. It is quite amazing, isn't it, George? In fact, the other day we actually saw an impala here that looked quite similar to those of the Mara, and I was quite astounded by it. You get these sort of big, widespread horns that go up, and we don't see that very much, particularly here in the Sabi Sands. If you go towards the eastern side up against the Lubombo Mountains, so on the sort of central plains of the Kruger National Park and up on those Lubombo Mountains, the impalas there also seem to get much bigger sets of horns than what we see here down in the Sabi Sands. So it must be some element of nutrition that causes that, as well as genetics. We know that in certain parts there'll be different genetics, and there'll be a reason why the horns are slightly larger on those antelopes up there than they are here. What that reason is, I'm not 100% sure, but maybe Stef will be able to answer as to why those horns there are slightly larger. Now, just above the impalas, which was spooked during the chaos, is a beautiful bird that is sitting in a dead tree, and I'm going to try and get a little bit closer just so that I can show you, because the light on it is very nice. So that dead tree in front there, Seb, is where it is, and hopefully it's going to stay when we get a little bit closer. And it'll be so nice if it's up against that really bright blue sky. So I'm going to just try and turn you a little bit. That should be quite nice, eh, Seb? I don't know, it might be a little bit close, a bit far, but we'll try. So you can see above the impalas is a lilac-breasted roller, and it is most definitely one of the most beautiful birds that we have at this time of the year. Bright turquoise blues on the wings, electric dark blues further down, and then that lilac chest area with a very sort of turquoise cap that it has at the back. So bright colors, and when it flies it is magnificent, and it will sit on that tree there because it's a nice open branch. It means that there's no places for leaves or anything like that that can get stuck on the wings as they then take off and swoop down to hunt insects that these impalas are going to be disturbing in their sort of movement around this area. So it's the perfect place for a roller to sit. Other than that, it's a windy afternoon, and well, you can see how hard the tail is working to try and balance this poor impala so it doesn't get blown off its little perch. So you're going to have to hang on for dear life, impala. There you can feel that wind is gusting.
Twice.
I said impala twice. I'm so sorry, guys. It's a roller, lilac-breasted roller. I do apologize. These things happen from time to time, you know. It's you're getting old. Can't you see all the grey hairs? So oh well. It seems like it might be that kind of an afternoon where I'm just going to be completely all over the show. And so while I try and work out in my brain the difference between an impala and a lilac-breasted roller, let's go across to the professor of the bush, old Stefan Winterboer, and I'm sure he knows the difference between these two subjects.
Isn't that lilac-breasted roller just the most amazing bright colors in an otherwise brown landscape out there at Djuma at the moment? Really fantastic bird. What you're looking at now, on the left-hand side at the top, you'll notice a fairly large antelope at the back of this group. That's the largest antelope species in Africa. That is an eland. And these are female eland for the most part. and about as big as a moose. So to give you an idea of their sizes, about as big as a moose, and they're busy lying down there under the shade. They are, funnily enough, mainly nocturnal, in my opinion, at least anyway. They tend to lie up in the shade almost the whole day. You never see them eating anything, and then at night time they move the most incredible distances up and down the slope to eat these short grass plains. In the morning you find them coming down and resting on the slopes. Now another slope dwelling animal, and one unique to this particular area, is the Coq's hartebeest, which we're going to see in a second. Carry on going, carry on going. There's a zebra busy looking at them. There's some more eland, and we are almost there. Let me see, we get in there a little bit up, and there we go. In the middle of the screen right there, that is a Coq's hartebeest, and one of the unique animals of this particular area. Just have a look at those fantastic horns. It's a little bit different to the Topi, although they share a lot of similarities, with the exception that these are almost entirely slope-dwelling antelope. They don't move off of the slopes and are very easily displaced by animals who do, and therefore their numbers are not very high in the Maasai Mara. They get displaced when the migration arrives. They get displaced by the wildebeest, actually displacing everything else off these plains, and they then move away, and who knows where they move to, but obviously to areas that are less suitable to them, and they become prey most probably to lion or hyena or other predators. But that is just a nice view of the Coq's hartebeest, or as it's commonly known in this area, the Kongoni, which I find absolutely bizarre. Here are the slopes of the Ululolo escarpment, which we are making our way down now, and it's just absolutely jam-packed with these animals. It's quite lovely to see on the way down here this afternoon. We must have passed already probably close to, I don't know, 1,000 head of game so far. It's just nice, and we're going to be heading off into the plains just in front of us now to have a look for those lions that disappeared into the ravine this afternoon. Mishman, you are absolutely right by saying, do the eland make a clicking sound when they walk? They absolutely do. For a long time it was speculated that their clicking noise was from their hooves, but it now is known to be a sinew that rubs over the knee of the eland. So as it's walking, a sinew clicks over a bone and makes a clicking noise as it walks, and that is for large eland. Why that is, why they have it, I don't actually know. It could be because it's very similar to how male impala lip smack at one another. It's an intimidation factor, and for all the eland around, what will it do? It will announce that there's a full-grown male eland coming, and they must move out of the way before he gets there. I don't know. That's just me speculating about that. While we're driving into this area now, it allows me a little bit of chance to discuss how wonderful this thing called Safari Live is actually, about us being able to come to you in one location from two locations so far away from one another, and how it really is just one of the most amazing technological things that we've got on our planet at the moment. Alright. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to be sending you back over to Tristan, which allows me to get into that tree line in front of us over there, and gives me some time to look for these lions that we're looking for. See you in a bit.
Well, Stef, you're always looking for a tree. Now, hopefully you don't get out and hug those and by mistake pick up a lion and hug that. Although, I reckon if you're a lion taking on Stefan Winterboer, you are in for a bit of a shock because, well, no one is tougher than Stef. And so, probably going to squeeze the lion out of its own coat, actually. Oh, hello. Now, I got quite excited about that. Now, hopefully they will sit tight. You see those little Francolins there, Seb? I want to just check if they're Coqui Francolins or Shelley's Francolins. They're one of the two. Now, come on. There we go, little Coqui Francolins. Those are so cool. Now, these guys, we don't see them very often, and they're easily identifiable by that very sort of rusty brown head that they've got. And they're the smallest of the Francolins we get here. And I really like these guys because they kind of shuffle around with these small little feet, and they kind of go along and they just try and hide out in the grass. And look at the camouflage when they get lower in the grass. Almost impossible to see them in the way that they're able to kind of just sit down. That flecked pattern that they have is vitally important to be able to disappear. So really cool to see, and it's not one that we see very often because unfortunately they're so small that you just overlook them from time to time. So we've got a female that's sitting there, that's the female, and then the male was the one that we saw first with that sort of brighter orange head. That's very cool. I haven't seen Coqui Francolins in quite a while. Like I said, they're not a common one for us. We mostly see the crested Francolins and the tall spurfile, so to see these guys is always very special. Now the two of you must be very careful because this is where Hassan and Shungile hang around, and they love to eat Francolins. Now Kesel Socks, you say very good camouflage indeed, isn't it? It's amazing how when they sit like that, and if they keeps its head still, it would be very difficult for us to see it. Luckily we have the technology of a camera that can get in very far, but for where we are it's almost impossible. Now that the male's disappeared, it's hard to actually see where that female is with the naked eye. Very cool indeed. So that was a nice little surprise. Now, I've also figured out the mystery behind our big white twirled plastic horns that I had the other day. So I don't know if any of you were watching, but we had these white plastic things that we found on the ground, and I eventually then attached them to Rusty, and we made Rusty into the Kudu mobile. And I've worked out now where they come from. They're from the electric lines that run along one of the main roads. What they are used for, I'm not quite sure, but it's attached at the poles are the electric lines, and I wonder if it's not where the guys actually can hold on to them to then attach them to the said pole themselves. So that's at least solves that mystery. Of course we got rid of them because, well, they were just in the way a little bit. It was a nice addition for our drive, but I remember, I think it was Ferg that was with me. He was telling me that it was messing around with his focus, and it's not an ideal place to have, especially if we had had any cats on the road or any sort of animal on the road really, and we were a bit nervous as to how certain animals would react to it. I was quite keen to see what elephants would do, because I think with them bobbing in the wind, I can just imagine a naughty young bull elephant coming along and grabbing it with his trunk and pulling it off, which I suppose is not what we really want, because we don't want elephants playing with plastic, but I thought it would be an entertaining way to kind of imagine elephants interacting with the Kudu Rusty mobile. Right, talking of elephants, which is the subject of what we have just discussed, I believe Stef, in his sort of journey to the tree itself and his quest for cats, has stumbled across the big, large, grey animals themselves.
Now we are driving next to this, we call it a drainage line at Djuma in South Africa, but in East Africa it's called a lugger. It's basically an eroded area where a streamlet is located. But because of the deep alluvial nature of this particular portion of the Maasai Mara, the Mara Triangle, you can see that it's very incised, deeply incised into the plains. And inside here, an entire pride of lion were swallowed this morning after they inhaled a zebra from all likes of things at the beginning of the morning safari. That was at it's 6 o'clock this morning, or 5:30 or something this morning. But just look at what we've got in front of us over here. We've got a surprise. We've got an African elephant for you, and in just such a lovely setting. There we go. I'll try and get my bald head out of the shot so that I don't blind you. Just have a look at that. Isn't that superb? That is a bull elephant. Not as large as they get at Djuma. I found that the Kruger bulls in Kruger National Park are much larger than the bull elephant that we found out here in the Mara Triangle, with the exception of a few big tusked bulls. I found the bodies and the tusks on average pretty much bigger than they are in in South Africa. Alright, we're in there. Let's see if we can go away. He has decided, oh, there we go, he's turned his head so we can see that gleam of ivory coming through there. Isn't that just wonderful? Old male, you can see the tips of his ears curled over. Those are just big radiators. So what they do is they pump all their blood in their body through those ears, and they flap their ears to cool the blood down, and their blood then re-enters the body cooler, and that helps them stay out on these grassy plains for much longer periods of time. Enormous bull elephant for this area. Not being particularly perturbed by us. You can see quite often these old bull elephants are escorted by what is affectionately called an askari. But similar to those Impala that we were with a little bit earlier, the older bull elephants enjoy the company of the younger bulls and enjoy their protection. Their senses are a little bit more alert, and the younger bulls benefit from the company as well, but also from the older bulls' knowledge and experience. They know what to eat and when to eat it. They know where to go when there's danger, what mountain passes to use, where to go when it's dry, where to go when it's wet, and all number of things in between as well. There's got an aeroplane flying over us. It's one of the ways that tourists get into these parks. The drive from Nairobi out here is roughly 5 hours. The flight is roughly 45 minutes, and a lovely way to get into this part of the world. That youngster there, he's probably just left his herd. He looks to be around about 16 to about 20 years old. Kirsty, could you please repeat George's question? I only got half of it. George, you've just asked, are there any theories as to why the bull elephant and the Kruger are bigger than they are out here in the Mara Triangle? George, not that I've read, but I would imagine it's got a lot to do with the variety in their diets. Out here, elephant can eat and do eat grass for the majority of the year. In the Kruger National Park, the elephants are forced to eat more woody species of plants for roughly half the year, because we have a winter and a summer there. And I think that change in diet has forced a change in the elephant's physiology. They need to be bigger and they need to be stronger so that they can reach up into the taller trees, also with the strength to push down the bigger trees. And I think that has just led to a sort of natural selection on a small scale that has just given us bigger bodied elephant and bigger tusked elephant. This elephant's not small though, by the way, George. This is a very big tusked bull, but from a weight point of view, I would average him at probably about 5,000 kilograms, about, let's call it about 10,000 pounds or so. This youngster, he probably comes in at about 3,000 kilograms or about 6,000 pounds. If we could go back to the big bull elephant who's following his young askari. You can see there those dents in his skull at the top just in front of his ears. That gives us an idea of his age. Now, Zippy, you wanted to know how thick his tusks are. Zippy, if you circle your waist with your hands, that is how thick it is as it comes out the lip over there. So an averaged human on the planet, an average Westerner or Caucasian, that is the size of the elephant tusk. So really big and thick, surprisingly thick. I mean, from here it looks as if you could circle that with your hands, but let me tell you that 4 of my hands wouldn't be able to go around that elephant tusk. And as long as your leg. Isn't that incredible, hey? So really big tusked elephant, you're looking at about 100 pounds a side. Generally speaking, the elephant that we're looking at now will probably be about, difficult for me to say, probably about 40 pounds, maybe 50 pounds a side. Now, from one of the or the largest land-based mammal on the face of the planet to one of the smallest carnivores in Africa.
Well, indeed, it is our smallest carnivore that we get on land here in the Sabi Sands, and this particular one is being as cute as possible. Look at its little nose go. He's busy sniffing us, and lots of scratching and grooming going on. And I really, really love these guys, and they were noticeably absent this morning. We didn't see one set of dwarf mongoose, and normally we see quite a few as we drive around in a morning drive. They're often out on the termite mounds sunning themselves, and well, this morning it was all very quiet. I've also spotted some other little creatures that are starting to come out, which is fantastic. And so these dwarf mongoose look as though they've just been down at sort of Treehouse Dam, and there's one actually on the tree stump itself. Let's just see its tail disappearing behind the knot. Where have you go? You were there somewhere. So I just saw a little tail disappear inside there. There it is. Hello. Are you having a little look around? Now, this is the perfect place for these guys to move around. They can forage in and amongst these trees. They'll be able to look out for scorpions that live inside those knotted, tangled bits of bark. There'll also be wood-boring insects and grubs that could potentially be there, and so for dwarf mongoose it's a great place. There's also nice hidey holes. Now in the background you can hear a lapwing that isn't happy, and that's because some warthogs have just walked right where its nest is. So at the back on the other side of the water is where the warthogs are, and that's why the lapwing is making so much noise. You can see there is the little baby warthog, the offender that had walked very close to the eggs, and when lapwings have eggs, they'll make a lot of noise when something like that walks close by, and what they're trying to do is basically push them away from where the eggs are and make sure that they don't actually stand on the eggs themselves. So it's a very clever tactic, and they'll open their wings out and they'll make a big show to try and chase them away, and well, job well done, because there go the warthogs off and into the distance. And our dwarf mongoose is watching all of this, just thinking to itself, oh, I'm glad I'm not on that side of the water. Better to be on this side. So, Justin, you're wondering how small a dwarf mongoose is when it's born. Well, they are tiny, tiny, tiny. No bigger than probably the size of my hand, with the tail included. So they are very, very little when they are first born. And they probably weigh, I would say, no more than 100 grams would be about, or maybe a little bit more, maybe 100 to 150 grams would be about the size of them. They are minute, not quite as small as what you'd see a squirrel baby, but a little bit bigger than that, but not tiny, I mean not big either. So really quite small little things, and ones that are very, very delicate. And like I say, they would probably fit like this from head to the base of the tail, and then the little tail that would go across there. So that would be about the size of a baby mongoose, which would be very cute, wouldn't you agree? Now, our mongoose has just come out again, and are you going to have a lie down there? It's almost lying down like it's a swimsuit model now. It's got its legs out, and it's kind of got its head up, posing in the sunshine. And you know those swimsuit models that sit on the beach with the waves lapping up? Now all we need is some waves lapping up by its tail, and you could be on the calendar of the next Sports Illustrated, young mongoose. Yes, I agree. You do look good from that side. Oh, gotta just get a little scratch. No, that's not so ladylike. Now, I'm not sure if it is a boy or a girl. Obviously, it's quite difficult with mongoose to tell, but then we go. Seb, can you come here quickly? So, my world, you say they're similar to meerkats in their inquisitive ways. Well, I agree with you, my world. They are very similar. But I've just noticed the same green spider that is once again with us. Now, this spider, I saw it the other day when I was sitting with Tumba, and it was crawling around the dashboard of Rusty, and it is now the same one again. And there we go. Hello. Look at those big eyes. Did you see them? The big black eyes that were looking up at us? And it's trying to work out what's going on, and it looks like a young jumping spider of sorts. It's got that big rounded head and those massive eyes on the front of the body that are typical of the jumping spiders. No, don't go that way, because we can't see your nice colors. We want to see you in the sun. But there, can you see the two big black eyes in the front? Now, jumping spiders are notoriously big-eyed, and the reason why they need big eyes is so that they can see what's going on. They have almost binocular vision by having two big eyes in the front, and then the other simple eyes more around there, or smaller eyes, sorry, should I say, around, and they can then judge distance a lot better than most spiders, because when they jump, they need to be able to see where they're going and how far it is to be able to land safely, and so that's why they have that binocular vision, as opposed to other spiders that have small eyes dotted all around the head. Very cool. And you can see how it moves its head all the time to look at what's going on. It's also got perfect camouflage for my dashboard. You can see that sort of green is quite similar, and it actually sitting there in the shade blends in very well. See that? Not going to be easy to see that at all. And if it was on a tree of some sort, it would be almost impossible if the leaves were a lightish color. And what are you doing? That was quite cool. No, I don't think it left a thread. I was trying to see if it maybe dropped a thread down, but it doesn't seem to have done so. So Justin, you always wonder how spiders would see our world. Well, Justin, they have a bit of a different eye to what we do. What are you doing? This looks like a yo-yo spider. It's kind of going down and up as fast as it can, and it almost looks like a bungee jumping spider, and maybe that's what it's doing. It's just having a good time jumping up and down. There we go, back up again. What are you doing? Now, Justin, their eyes are not like ours, so we've got very complicated eyes that are able to work out light and distance and judge quite far away and see very, very well. Spiders don't have the same situation. They've got simple eyes, compound eyes, not like what we do. And basically, Stef described this morning about flies having eyes, and it's almost like a whole bunch of GoPros on their head. And it's the exact same thing with spiders, is that they'll have all of these lenses, and it will basically make it quite difficult to see very far, but they can see movement all around them, and that means that if anything comes close, they can then jump away or move away and try and protect themselves. The jumping spider's eyesight is much more developed because, like I say, they do jump and they do move, and so they need to be able to see distance and be able to then land safely on the other side. So their eyesight is slightly more developed than most of the other spiders. Most of the other spiders also don't need their eyesight for hunting, because remember, they construct these webs, and as the animal then moves into the web, so that they can then grab it and feed off it by injecting the venom, and the web actually catches them. So they don't need eyesight to hunt, and they just need eyesight to pick up any sort of movement around them that they can then get away. And so their eyes generally will pick up movement all around the body, and so if you move your hand like this over a spider, you'll see it'll often turn its fangs accordingly to try and defend itself. It's really quite amazing to watch. But I don't know where our suicidal spider went. He seemed to drop down, and that was the end of that. Now, Monique from London, you want to know how often spiders need to eat. Well, Monique, it's very dependent on the spider. Obviously, we've got some spiders that are quite big, like the golden orb webs, and their requirement for food will be a lot more than the requirements of a tiny little spider like what we've just had on our dashboard. That spider there is tiny and smaller than my pinky fingernail, so really very little, and that means that that little spider will only need a small morsel of food every now and then, whereas the golden orb webs, they tend to catch quite a bit. And it's interesting to watch how it all works, because the other day I was watching a garden orb web spider, and the garden orb web spider is quite big, and it had multiple different kills within its web system, and a grasshopper went in and it went down straight away, injected the venom and wrapped it up, but didn't feed on it. It left it alone. It then went to an older one and fed off that, and so it probably lasts them quite a long time, given that they probably have quite a slow metabolism. They don't really need to utilize or need to feed as often as something like a wild dog that moves around all the time and is going around everywhere. But the thing about spiders is that their silk is a protein, so they're going to use nutrients that they're getting from their prey in order to make their silk, and so they probably feed, I would say a garden orb web spider of that size is probably feeding every 3-4 days, but I might be wrong. I'll have to do a bit more research on it. And a tiny spider like this, I have actually no idea how much that would need to feed on and what the percentage of its body weight would be in terms of food that it requires per day to survive. It's an interesting one to know, and I don't know if there's been too many studies on baby spiders themselves. Now, I do want to go into the Mulawati, but it is full of gremlins, and our conference is going to be joining us shortly, so I think I'm going to avoid the Mulawati for this little section and try and get to it a little bit later. But what a beautiful afternoon it is. It's turned out to be such a nice day. If only the wind would just drop a little bit more, we would have the most fantastic weather imaginable. It's warm for a winter's day, and I actually can't believe how warm we've had it the last few weeks. It's kind of, we're approaching July, and normally at this time of the year it's freezing. We normally, kind of go out in the morning and you feel like your ears are going to fall off because it's so cold, and well, that really hasn't materialized. There's been 1 or 2 mornings, but nothing major. Seb, it's been warm this winter, hasn't it? It has been very warm. Yeah, I also thought so as well, and I know it's been worse than that, being here myself a few winters. It sometimes can get a bit hairy and a bit sort of cold and difficult to deal with, and certainly don't wear shorts that often, but this winter I had worn shorts pretty much every day or every afternoon and been quite comfortable. So it is a beautiful winter, and it's going to be interesting to see how that affects our water table, because the drought last year, the summer was actually the big problem, because we had a very hot summer, and in fact the average temperature of the summer last summer as opposed to this summer was almost 6 degrees higher than what we're seeing now, and so that meant there was a lot of evaporation and a lot of water that was gone. And I would love to know what the average temperature so far this winter has been as opposed to last winter, because even though we had a little bit more rain and cooler temperatures this summer, if we get a warmer winter, maybe it will be the exact same effect, and a lot of this water will start to dry up over the next month or two. Right, now it's that time of the afternoon that the conference is going to join us, so we're going to just quickly welcome them and let them join into the show, and we'll be fielding questions from them for the next sort of 15 minutes to half an hour as we go through the wonders of being able to educate and the systems that we use to be able to take the bush to the classrooms around the world. Good afternoon and welcome to the International Society for Education and Technology. It is really wonderful to have you with us this afternoon. I hope that you're going to enjoy your time with us. It is an amazing, amazing thing that we're able to broadcast to all the young minds across the world, and well, to you, the teachers that allow that to happen. So wonderful to have you with us. Remember, it is interactive, it is live, so you can ask any questions. Should you have any, you can send them through and we'll try and get through as many as possible. Now, we're on the search for elephants and leopards this afternoon, so we're checking all the waterhole systems. It's a fairly warmish afternoon for this time of the year. We are in our deep winter, which means that we've got a little bit of a cooler temperatures and drier temperatures, and so the animals tend to go towards where there is water at this time of the day. And so we're just checking around there, trying to see if we can't find our big, large grey giants and spend some time with them. There was also lots of leopard activity yesterday afternoon, and so we're trying to see if we can't find some of the leopards hanging around in some of the water holes. So that's the kind of plan for the afternoon so far, and hopefully we will be successful at some point, because there is nothing better than being able to find the spotted beauties or the big, large grey giants. Ah, Jackie, so you want to know if I've ever been attacked? Well, no, Jackie, actually, hang on, I have to clarify that. Now, I have been chased by animals many times, and I've had one incident where in a vehicle there was contact made between an animal and myself, and that was a big white rhino male that was trying to mate with a female. And it was a really unusual situation, because generally a lot of our animals out here will give you very clear, very definite warning signs as to what's going on. So if they're upset with you, there'll be, in a rhino's case, lots of snorting and huffing and puffing, and they'll run and they'll do circles and they'll kick up dust and they'll try really impose themselves on you. But this rhino was just walking behind some females, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just turned around, walked straight up to the front of the car, shoved his horn into the radiator, picked the car up and pushed it about 2 meters back, and then put it down again and walked off. So that's the only real scary kind of incident I've had on a car. When we do walks in this area, though, I've had quite a few tough ones there where I've been charged by lion and leopard and buffalo and elephants, and you've got to have your little bit of your wits about you and try and stand up to those and not run away, which takes a little bit of courage. So Jackie, you want to know if a student wanted to have a career like ours, what might prepare them for this? Well, Jackie, I think it's a difficult question in that obviously there's very few parts of the world that have the fauna and flora that what we have here in Africa. Now, of course, there are great national parks all across the world, and so here in South Africa we have a system where people will basically go into a theoretical approach where they'll do a lot of exams and do theory on all of that encompasses this area, and then they do practical sides to be able to be guides in this area. There's a lot of other people that will come from a zoology, biology background, and so if people study those at the schools that they're in or the universities or colleges that they go to, that's also going to be a massive help. There's a lot of push at the moment for people that can do conservation degrees, that can do ecology and management of the bush, and so these kind of areas will benefit hugely from that. So for kids that are aspiring to that, it's to research and to be able to then go into those fields and get some sort of qualification behind it would be really quite a big step in the right direction. From there, coming out into these areas, once you've got a degree, it becomes a lot easier to be able to infiltrate into these bush environments and start to then be able to show the wonders of the world to many people across the globe. So that's basically how it works. Here in South Africa, like I say, at the moment, we're still developing this particular industry of guiding, and so you do basically a theoretical examinations that's mixed with practicals to be able to show that you can handle yourself out in the bush and be able to handle a rifle and vehicles and be able to keep people safe as you take them around. So, John, you're wondering how much land we cover? Well, John, it depends on where we are. So, we've got a team up in the Maasai Mara in East Africa, and they are covering over 120,000 hectares or 260,000 acres of prime wilderness area, which is big open grassland. Here in the Sabi Sands, it's a little bit different. We're in a much smaller system, but because of the dense amount of trees and vegetation, it allows for a situation for a lot of animals to be able to utilize the same sort of area of land. So here we're using about 2,400 acres of a system that is 8.5 million acres. So the greater Kruger National Park, while it is not in the whole area that we drive around in, it is all open. The animals can move around in that. So you can imagine 8.5 million acres, how many animals are distributed throughout, and this kind of system, because of the trees and all the grasses that we have, that allows us to have a high density of animals in this area. Now, I was mentioning Kenya and I was mentioning East Africa and our team that is up there, and this afternoon we've got Stef who's out and about, and he is busy with the biggest land animal that we get out here.
And just like that, you are 4 countries away and almost 4,000 miles north of where Tristan was just speaking to you from. My name is Stefan. We have Senzo today on camera, and we welcome you to this safari, this live safari all the way from Kenya. This is what's happening right now at just 10 to 5 here in the afternoon. And there you have a herd of elephant, a breeding herd of elephant, as is evidenced by that youngster that just fell into the hole there with mom turning around just to give him a hand. Shame. You can see how attentive mother elephant are. It really just goes to show you they don't let even a little slip up like that go unnoticed. So herds in the Maasai Mara are slightly bigger than in Kenya. Oh, look, in the foreground you've got some warthog as well. Almost the same size as that little elephant that fell into the hole with mom. Glenn, you wanted to know what the most exciting thing about being a guide is. Glenn, for me, the most exciting thing about being a guide is probably the ability to dip yourself into a life-threatening situation, come out on the other side and figure out what type of person you are. It's one of those careers very similar to, I suppose, a fighter pilot or a fireman or a policeman. So you put into situations that are fantastic situations. It just so happens that these situations are with large animals and dangerous lions and leopard that could jump into the car at any moment, and doing nighttime safaris like we do out here. And it just, I suppose you come out of a situation like that just knowing yourself a little bit better. I suppose I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, even though I'm considered to have to be mature at this particular moment in time. I still like wearing shorts and playing in the mud and sand and grass out here, and have been doing so for the last 20 years or so. So it is absolutely a viable career and absolutely what I enjoy doing. Now, Let's go back to that zebra because it answers Pat's question, who wanted to know which species dominate the waterholes. Pat, at this time of the day, what dominates the waterholes is exactly what you're looking at right now. Those elephant, they love to drink in the middle of the day and toward the end of the afternoon. Equally, in the middle of the day, warthog come and bathe in the mud. And the reason why they do that is because lion activity is almost at a zero during the middle of the day. It's not 100% zero, but almost at a zero. And for warthogs to spend some time coming to a dangerous, if you go left, you'll see them with the zebra. There we go. For warthogs, it is a little bit dangerous to approach water. Lions quite often lie in ambush around waterholes and are the favorite food of lion. And so they come and bath in the mud in the middle of the day. You can actually see that the belly of that pig on the right hand side has some mud on it. You can see evidenced by the slightly different color that you can see there. They're fairly big. You get them roughly about 200 pounds when they're at their largest. Let's go a little bit to the left and I will show you exactly what is a lion's favorite food. There we go. Now, Doug, you've just asked, could teachers do anything to prepare their students for the safari school drive? Doug, yes, absolutely you could. You know, to have a basic understanding of what to expect is always a good thing. You know, it's a much deeper experience, a much richer experience to discuss topics rather than discuss what that is. So, for instance, it's good to know that a striped horse-like animal that is black and white is a zebra. And they live on these African plains, and in the Maasai Mara, at least anyway, you have zebra that live here, but you also have zebra that migrate, and that will lead on to a discussion, for instance, around the Great Migration, which we're here to see and witness. It also might open up topics depending on the age of the kids in question as to why zebras are stripy, why they always like living in the open sun, what herd structures are like. And so those are really rich, rewarding discussions. You know, obviously if the children are at a much lower age, then why this is a horse is more pertinent than, you know, what the social hierarchy in a zebra herd is. But nevertheless, it is just wonderful to see. For me, some of the favorite patterns on a zebra is that over the front leg, across the shoulder, you can see where the patterns come together there. And if you asked someone to draw stripes on a body shape like that, I don't think that they'd get it as perfect first time round. On the topic of zebras spending some time in the sun, there is actually a theory that zebras are black and white with those stripes to help cool them down, a type of thermoregulation, and that the black stripes get hotter and so radiate heat off, thus sucking heat out of the white stripes and pulsating heat off. So you've got these alternating bands of heat and cooling, and that allows them to stay out in the sun for a little bit longer. Now, Tracy, you just wanted to know oh, forgive me, I've actually forgotten your question right now, Tracy. If I could ask Kirsty just to repeat. Katie, you wanted to know if this area, or how long this area has been protected from hunting. Katie, this reserve is one of the oldest reserves in Africa. There's a camp here called Governor's Camp, which has been here since the 1970s, and since those times this area has been relatively free of hunting. Kenya has been free of hunting for decades now, so there hasn't been safari operators in Kenya that were allowed to shoot animals for profit for decades now. A really progressive African country when it comes down to hunting. Hunting, of course, is not bad. Hunting in its pure sense and rightly managed is one of the primary primary, let me say, conservation forces, it quite quickly gets eclipsed by the more sophisticated ways of tourism management and conservation. And so once hunting has gone in and stabilized an area, employed people that do subsistence farming or subsistence hunting or poaching on that particular area, employed them, quite often they get eclipsed by the more sophisticated and higher revenue tourism, I suppose, institutions, very similar to Angama Mara, for instance, or Little Governors, or Governors Camp for that matter of fact. So hunting hasn't been allowed here for a long time. It doesn't mean that hunting doesn't happen though. At a subsistence level, hunting will happen all over Africa. There's a lot of hungry mouths to feed in Africa, and so you do get subsistence hunting or subsistence poaching here as well. Commercial poaching is controlled quite heavily by very active anti-poaching units that are active in the Mara Triangle and the Maasai Mara, and so although it does occur, it hasn't really been able to escalate in scale as it did in the 1980s when rhino poaching and elephant poaching was pretty much, in my opinion, at its height in these areas. And as you can see from the health of these elephant herds that we have, it's working incredibly well. Now, Sarah, you wanted to know what adaptations elephants have to enable them to survive in this area. Sarah, they're clever. They've got a very large brain, and that allows them to be incredibly adaptable. They're large, so they don't get preyed upon. They've got a trunk, which allows them to pick up food at any level, so higher than them, but also deeper than what they can push their bodies into vegetation. So that allows them to feed on a much wider piece of any bush. They're strong, so they can push trees over and get to their roots, which would otherwise be hidden under the ground. They've got tusks, which allow them to pry bark off of trees, which allows them to get to the very nutritious and mineral-laden layers of cambium underneath the bark. What else? They are very hardy. They can go walk incredible distances between feeding areas and water. They have a very thick skin, which acts as a sun retardant, although they do get quite hot on their skin, but it allows their body to cool down. They've also got those enormous ears, which act as radiator fans, cooling the central body temperature down, and that allows their blood to stay cool and allows them out when other animals are seeking shade. They're good mothers. They've got long gestation periods. You're looking at 22 months for an elephant, so babies are born pretty much fully formed, and so mothers can spend a long time on a single calf teaching them what they need to learn. They're long-lived, which means they can build up a vast experience of knowledge, where to go when it's dry, where to go when it's wet, what to do when the wind blows, when there's fire, when there's not so much food, which trees are ripe when. And Sarah, I'm running out of things to say actually. I think I might be, hopefully I'm not boring you with an endless barrage of stuff, but do know I'm running out at the end of my adaptations list for elephant. Alright, but Tristan has managed to find himself one of my favorite bodies of water at Djuma, and so we are going to be throwing you to the south of the African continent, and I'll catch up with you a bit later.
Well, we are at Stef's favorite body, and it's one of my favorites as well. It's right in the northwestern corner of the reserve, and it is a beautiful body of water. And Seb has shown us there was some brown-headed parrots, which were the only parrot species that we actually get here, and we'll get back to them now. But isn't that pretty? It's a beautiful little water hole that's developed here, and you find a lot of animals that will come down and drink. It's a great place to check at this time of the day. Often elephants, buffalo, we know the cats do spend time here from time to time as well, so it is a wonderful area to check. Now Seb, I think our parrots might have flown off, unfortunately. No, there they are. So they've just flown away now, unfortunately. So, Spunk, you want to know when is the rainy season and whether it gets very green. Well, the rainy season for us starts in October and then will extend all the way through into late April, and that's when we get most of our rains, and that will then change and transform this landscape from this barren white dry grass that we see now to lush green grass. There'll be flowers, there'll be trees with fruits all over them, and it will be a very, very different scene that we'll get. We'll also find water in a lot more areas, and so it means that the distribution of animals in the summer months is slightly different to what we see now. Now in the winter we get animals congregating where there is water because there's very few water sources. In summer, water is pretty much everywhere, and so the animals distribute a lot more. But what water does bring is it brings a real big boom in life. So we'll get a lot of insects that will come, a lot of migratory birds that end up here, and the biomass of this area explodes exponentially during the summer months. So it really is a great time to be in the bush. It's often quite hot and a little bit humid, and so it's a little uncomfortable, but if you can withstand that, it is really a spectacular time of the year. Winter becomes spectacular more for the mammals because they all get driven into similar locations, and that then causes quite a lot of interaction. Now there is one of my favorite birds in front here. It's a beautiful starling that is just posing ever so nicely in the sunlight, and look at that. That is called a birchless starling, and you see the metallic blues and purples that were shining off that body. Now interestingly enough, that bird is actually black in color. That light and those colors that you're seeing coming back at us is a trick of the eye. It's not actually those colors. They don't produce true blue pigments. It is a way that the light reflects off the structure of the feather, as well as the oils on that are from the preening gland, and that gives us an iridescent shine back, and that's why we pick up these light blues and greens and purples. If it was a dark, overcast, cloudy day, we would not see that at all. Alright, it would be a very dull bird. It's not like what we're seeing now, and isn't that amazing? And it seems like it wants to become friends with us. Now there is a line of elephant dung on the road that has been spread around during the day today, because what's happened is they've graded the road, so they've pulled a tire along just to flatten the roads out for the vehicles, and that meant that it spread the elephant dung. Now that means that it's a perfect opportunity for birds to scavenge on this, because as the elephant dung has been pulled apart, so it's exposing a whole bunch of different insects that generally would be difficult to get to for the starling, and so it's taking advantage of that, and it was just working its way along that elephant dung pathway to try and get as much of the food that it can out of there. So very, very clever bird indeed. Now there's also tracks for elephants in this area, so I'm going to try and see if I can't follow them. I'm going to just reverse back and see if we can't track them down. It seems like they were moving to my northern side here and to my west, and so I'm pretty sure we should be able to catch up with them somewhere. Their tracks look quite fresh from this afternoon. Oh, Melissa, this is a good question. You want to know what my most memorable experience is as a guide. Well, Melissa, it's tough because there's so many different elements of guiding that make it fantastic, and so there is sightings that have action and drama, and then there are moments where you introduce people for the first time to this wildlife, and you see the tears coming out of their eyes as they see their first elephant or their first lion or their first leopard, or there's moments where you see tender mother caring for their young, or the hardships of these animals trying to survive. And so it's really difficult to put a finger on the most memorable thing about guiding, but I think for me, just in terms of a capper off of the whole of my guiding career, has been just being able to spread and show this beautiful part of South Africa and of our country to many people across the world. So all the people that I've guided, all the amazing characters I've met along the way, and being able to then link them to the bush has been a very special part of my job, and that's probably what I cherish the most. Now you can hear above me the parrots are calling quite a bit. So Seb, I think the one over there is going to be better for you, to the left maybe, just straight. And there we go, there it is. So that one's going to be much more in the open. And I was saying earlier that this is the only parrot species that we get here in South Africa. Well, not in South Africa, should I say, sorry, in this part of South Africa. And they are beautiful, bright green on the rump area and the wings, and then they've got this brown head, and you can hear them. They sound just like parrots. And this is quite cool because they really are quite difficult to get on camera. They tend to fly around quite a bit, and they generally are quite tough to actually follow. So nice to see, and you can see they're busy just feeding off some of the seeds. Now, I was talking about just now about my most memorable moments of about sort of introducing this whole world to many people and guests that I've guided over the years, and well, being able to show that to schools now and doing what we do on Safari Live and being able to broadcast this to many places across the world, and particularly the young minds of the world, is probably one of the most rewarding things. They are the future leaders, the people that will be going into all kinds of different pathways and going into politics and into all kinds of education systems, and they will be the ones that will spread the word about conservation and keeping places like this still alive and magical. So to be a part of that and to be able to share it with all of those schools really is probably one of the best perks of our job here. And there are so many young minds out there that are becoming fascinated with wildlife, and if we can contribute in any way to educating those, well, that's just the best thing that we can possibly think of. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you all with us this afternoon. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your conference. From myself and Seb, enjoy the rest of your day, and we shall hopefully see all of you with your classrooms of kids on a drive at some stage. Right, so that was our conference. Hopefully we will be able to see some young minds with us, but I'm so excited about our brown-headed parrots, and I know I can't remember who it was that was asking me about brown-headed parrots the other day and was asking me to show them, and I kept promising and I kept missing them. Well, that is probably the best view that I've had of them since I've been here, particularly with the camera. So that was very cool, and I'm glad that we actually stopped by Buffelshoek Dam to try and find them and see if they were around, which is very cool. Unfortunately, our elephants look as though they're going straight up towards Buffelshoek boundary, as is the story of my day today. It's been sort of following tracks all to boundaries, and hopefully these Ellies haven't gone too far. Their tracks are fresh. You can see them on the road in front of me. Big discs all along and big circular sort of objects there. Look at that. The whole road is covered. There is not a single track on top of those. So those are very, very fresh, and ones that were made sort of during the course of today, because this road was graded today with tires, which means that it had to have been some time between the afternoon, well, midday and now. So hopefully these Ellies haven't gone too far, and hopefully I'll be able to find them. It would be nice to see some elephants. Seb and I were just talking about how we've really missed Ellies and how it would be so nice to actually have a herd of elephants back in this area and really kind of, you know, spending a long, nice afternoon with Ellies playing and having a good time. Oh, hello guys, I didn't even notice you there. So it's not Ellies, but one of my other favorite animals that we get out here. Seb, is that alright for you, for this female? Yeah. Cool. So we've got some Nyala, and like I say, I really do like Nyala. They're such a pretty antelope. They look as though they belong in sort of an exotic movie. I don't know why. They always remind me of Dr. Dolittle and all these fantastical creatures that come out of it. And they're white stripes, big fluffy tails, white tip to the tail, and then those shaggy coats on the males. And I suppose just also the difference between male and female makes them an animal that I really like to see and always get quite happy when I see them. And it goes back a little bit to when I was a kid, because when I was a kid I used to spend a lot of time in the Kruger National Park with my grandparents, and Nyala was one of those antelopes that we never used to see. We used to spend a lot of time in the southern Kruger, and at that stage Nyala were not a common animal at all. We used to see a lot of kudu and bushbuck, which are from the same family, but no Nyala. And as time has gone on and I kind of went away and came back as a guide into this area, so the Nyala numbers have really exploded down in the southern parts of the Kruger and into this area, and Nyala has become quite commonplace now. And when I was a kid, it was almost that exotic antelope that was only if you went into the far reaches of the Kruger, which was an area where, you know, it was a big adventure to go there, and that's why it kind of became that animal that I would want to see. Isn't it interesting, this female's markings? Look at how much white she's got on her cheeks and around her head. That's really cool. Now, I'm not sure why she's so white. It's probably that she's just has a few hair cells that are leucistic, and so you don't have to have an animal that is completely white. Sometimes you can get a partial leucism that develops on an animal, and that's what that is. It's got really big white blotches all over the head, which is unusual. I've never seen a Nyala that looks like that before. That is really cool. The first time I've seen you here, girl. Now turn your head sideways. I want to see how much white you've got on your face. You can already see there's quite a bit of white on top of her head, which is already very unusual. And the ears look quite light as well. I'm just trying to see her with my naked eye on the sort of flanks of her body if they're more white, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like she's pretty uniform on the back and sides. It's more around her face that she's got this white coat developing. That's very cool. So she's very unique. Now my spider friend that we had earlier has just decided to build an entire web across my face. So, oh, there we go. Look at that. Look at all the white. If you see the ones in the background, you see how little white they've got on their face as opposed to her. Absolutely amazing. And you can see her eyes are not a different color, so she's not an albino. She just has slightly more white pigments in her fur, which means that she's got a little bit of leucism. Wow, that's incredible. I can honestly say that is the first time in my life that I have seen a Nyala that even has any sort of blotching of white like that around the face and neck area. And she seems to be an older female. You can see her ears are a little bit tatty in places, and I would imagine that both of these Nyala that are accompanying her are her offspring. So she seems to have been fairly successful, and in no way is that influencing her ability to survive, but just something amazing. So one of those anomalies in the bush that you don't see every day. And, well, we haven't seen much else today, but that's really quite special. Hello, little man. Wow, that's cool. So, Kestrel Socks, you're wondering if animals can get melanin disorders. Well, we do get melanistic versions of a lot of our animals. So we know panthers are a melanistic version of a jaguar. We get black leopard. There's melanistic birds that occur quite often, but whether or not they get complications from that, I'm not quite sure, to be honest. I would be telling a fib if I was to answer that and say for sure that there was either one or the other. Maybe some of your viewers out there know whether or not we do actually have any of our animals that suffer from complications of producing too much melanin. I haven't never read about it in any of the wildlife things, but I suppose it's possible. What I do know is that in a lot of the areas of South Africa where unfortunately there's hunting farms that have been developed and they've bred certain animals to be of a certain color, so they breed black impalas, those animals are starting to have recessive genes that are causing a lot of issues where they are getting susceptible to certain diseases and then passing those on to natural populations. So there's been a big outcry about breeding and engineering animals in terms of having black impala, white impala, and making them more and more common because they're getting them resistant to certain diseases, and other diseases they're starting to develop, and that's causing massive problems for wild populations. So it's possible, but I've just never read about it in the wild. So I've never heard of any animals in the wild having any melanin issues, but I would be really interested to know. So if you do have any information on it, #SafariLive, and we'll try and see if we can decode and work out if there are animals with melanistic disorders. But you can see how they're eating that torchwood there. They really are tucking in. So take care. You're wondering if the animals go grey as they age. Well, you'll find with the cats, they don't really go grey, but they become much lighter around the muzzle area, and same with the wild dogs. The wild dogs actually do go grey. They end up having a very sort of light coloured muzzle with white flecks that develop around the eyes and the ear area, and so they do actually start to look as though they've aged. A lot of the other animals know, so things like elephants, we know that have very little hair, so they don't go grey. You'll find the lions, very seldom will they change colour, or leopards, they just get lighter around the muzzle. It's more white than grey itself, and so they do get lighter in coloration as they get older, but not grey like we do as people. It's interesting how animals, and particularly the antelope species, don't develop like that, and I wonder if it's because a lot of the animals, particularly in the wild, when they get to an age where they maybe would start to show those signs, they get killed. Because remember, out here, as you age and you get slower and weaker, so predators then target you. But if you look in zoos and places like that, a lot of the animals keep their coloration all the way through. So things like Nyala, kudu, I've never heard of any of them going fully grey or silver like us as people do. Like you and I, Seb, we're becoming silver foxes, aren't we? Yes. Now, for those of you who don't know, Seb has also got a few strands of grey growing out of his hair, and well, I do too. You can see them all drifting and glittering in the sunlight. It's a sore point, and one that we don't want to get on because it's a sign of my age, and well, I can blame this I can blame this for the fact that I confused a lilac-breasted roller for an impala earlier, and it's all the grey hair's fault. So, a sign of wisdom. Oh, thanks, Seb. That's nice. Nice to stick up for us. Now, Seb, I don't think we're going to see our elephants because, well, they're just going straight north towards Buffelshoek. And so while we try and just confirm that, let's go across to Stef, who's still on the hunt for lions and whether or not he's been successful.
It's also a sign of stress, lack of sleep, and basically just a life spent under too much sun, I suppose. But thank you, Tristan. Alright, you're looking at some lion lying there under the tree. It looks like a female lion. Very difficult to see because they're lying flat in the shade of that tree in the grass. What you're looking at there, that white, is the belly of the lion. To the left, the swell that you see is the back leg. Going to the foot just in the foreground of the belly, that breathing that you see there, and then obviously out to the other side, to the right, you've got the shoulder, and then just to the right in the middle, you've got the ear of a lioness. Now they sleep roughly 16 hours a day. As we're seeing, we're busy following lions almost around the clock at the moment, and we are seeing that they spend vast amounts of their time sleeping. We've always been told it's 16 to 20 hours a day, and I can absolutely confirm that it is between 16 and 20 hours per day that they spend sleeping. And the reason for that is they're fairly big. You're looking at a female lion anywhere from 300 to 400 pounds. Probably not as much as 400 pounds, but let's call it from 200 to 300 pounds is the average. Male lions anywhere from 500 pounds to 600 pounds. And that is a lot of animal to carry around, and covered in the fur that they are, they get hot and can actually run the risk of heat stroke and die. So generally speaking, they spend their afternoons and their days sleeping like this. It's not uncommon to find lion hunting throughout the day though, but you can see that in the west the sun is setting. That is where you're looking now, and this tree would have been throwing a decent sized shadow across the ground, and that is what that lion would have been following since the sun came up this morning. There might actually be more than one lion there. It's actually quite difficult for me to see exactly how many are here. Quite often it's rare for single lioness in this area to be on their own. You might find that there are more than one lion there because of the slight depression in the grass, making it difficult for us to see. But that is definitely an African lion, doing what they do best, sleeping. Isn't it just amazing that we can bring you, this is live right now. It is now 20 past 5 in the afternoon. Oh, big in-breath there, big stretch out the toes. 20 past 5 in the afternoon, and live as live can be. This is happening right now. I just see one there. I don't see another lion there. Oh, there we go. Here's another lion in the grass. Well done, Senzo. You got the tail flicking up. So definitely more than one lion here, which is good, because it would have been rare to see a lion on their own unless they are sick or injured. And so good to know that there are some pride mates of this particular pride female. They hold this area, and they would have been hunting these open grasslands during the evening last night. The sun would have caught them in this place, and from there they would have slept underneath these trees. No other ones there. We're just busy scanning the grassland for you. Oh, rolled over. Look at that. That is so typically cat, putting that white belly to the sun and reflecting a lot of the heat rays off of their belly, sweating, letting the wind cool that sweat down. Doug, you wanted to know the ancestral people of the Mara involved in the management of this reserve. Doug, absolutely. The ancestral people of the Mara, the Maasai, actually own this reserve. So not only do they own the land, they manage the land, they generate revenue off of the land, they own title next to the land, they have and are the sole shareholders in this particular reserve. Isn't that just a fantastic thing? So the Maasai are the ancestral people. This is Maasai land. The Maasai stretch from about 150, 200 miles north of where we are to about 250 miles south of where we are, and about the same width. So a very vast chunk of land. There you're seeing the edges of the reserve. On top of that escarpment there is where the Mara Triangle ends and Maasai tribal land starts, but there's no fence. So Maasai people have a grey area on the edge of the reserve where they can graze their cows, and animals move up and down that slope. It's not uncommon to find elephant, zebra, eland, leopard, lion, everything in the evenings up and down that slope and on top there. And because the Maasai don't traditionally eat game meat or venison, they only eat goat and sheep, and on the odd occasion cows, the animals have a very sort of harmonious relationship with the Maasai. It's actually quite nice. Just have a look at that vista that you had there. Not obviously the vista of my bald head shining in the sun at the moment, but the vista that we have stretching down the Olilolo escarpment, and that there is in Tanzania. And this is all in Kenya where we are right now. And just lovely. Really quite nice afternoon, I must be honest. Sorry, Kirsty, would you just repeat Jennifer's question there? I didn't quite get it. Let's see if we can go back to these lions and see what they're doing. Right. Once again, Kirsty, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my radio breaking in and out. You know, we are live. Sorry, Jennifer, I now got your question. What do lions mostly prey on? What do they mostly eat? And sorry to get so long to answer your question. You know, we are coming live to you out of the middle of a very, very remote piece of Africa, and every now and again the signal goes somewhere else. Jennifer, the lions are specifically adapted to eat prey species between the weights of 50 kilograms, which is 100 pounds, and 250 kilograms, which is 500 pounds roughly. They are supremely designed to hunt those sized animals. Falling into that weight category is anything from an Impala ram all the way up to a stallion zebra, full-grown kudu, waterbuck, young eland, and the young of most of the large animals. So young hippo, young rhinoceros, young elephant, young giraffe, all of the youngsters fall within that prey range, but they are just supremely gifted between that 100 pound to 500 pound weight category. They will eat almost anything though. So carrion is not something a lion will turn away easily. They will even fish. I've seen them eating snakes, birds, and on the odd occasion even grass and vegetables when it comes down to it. So lions are very adaptable to what they eat, but their body size, structure, the way that they cooperatively hunt, which is unique amongst all the cats. There we go. I thought that lion was going to sit up, but no, it was just a paw stretching into the air, tail flicking some flies. So uniquely adapted to hunting the large boned herbivores. Now, well, between up to about 500 kilograms. Now, the reason why lions hunt cooperatively is because out here on the open grass savannas, the large boned herbivores have a distinct advantage in that, being many, there's many sets of eyes and ears, and being fleet of foot with their superb single toe or double digit hoofed design, they can easily outrun lion over any meaningful distance. And so lions need to get close, for one, but secondly they also need to be able to block off escape channels so that they can ambush prey as well. As you can imagine, out here in the wide open savannas, let's just have a look at this. You can see that although there are bushes around, you're going to need to, if you were alone, for instance, like a leopard, you'd need to get very close over a long period of time, and that would take too long for a big animal. So having more of you allows you to close off more escape routes, and then allows you to hunt better. So nice, good question there, Jennifer. Thank you very much. That's such an epic scene there. I would imagine that with the wind blowing at Djuma, Tristan doesn't have exactly the same clouds, that we have. Although being June at Djuma, I know when the wind blows it heralds a change in temperature, and usually for the negative, bringing quite cold and blustery weather, and not uncommon rain. Here the raining season has come to an end. They have a long rain, or we have a long rain here and a short rain. The long rain lasts from April or March through to about June, and the short rain is just November and December. Here we have a dove, a turtleneck dove from the look of it. A bird similarly found 3,000 miles south of here at Djuma. Isn't that just lovely? Well done, Mr. Senzo. Ellie, you've just asked me an interesting question. You've just asked me, is it true that the Maasai wear red because it scares the lions, and their cattle can see them, if I got the end of that question correct? Ellie, you know, the lions are scared of Maasai and their shukas. That's that red blanket that they wear. The lions are definitely terrified, as is most of the animals out here, of a Maasai in full warrior garb with his shuka over his shoulders. Although there's an easy understanding. They don't run terrified, they just create some space. Let me think about where it comes from. I was told the story about where the Maasai colour comes from the other day. It's mainly from the ochre that was found. Where the Maasai come from, there was an abundance of ochre in the soil, and they used to take that ochre and dye their skins, the leather and the cloth that they used to wear, and the fabric that they used to make with this red ochre. As traders started to trade with the Maasai, and more sophisticated traders used to trade with the Maasai, so the dyes that were available to the Maasai people were obviously more vibrant and richer, but that affinity for red never went away. And so that is, as far as I understand it, at least anyway, why they love to wear that rich, vibrant color. But it's not just the red. Maasai have and do wear blues, purples, any number of colors and mixtures of colors together. It's just that they do enjoy that red shuka, and I have seen animals react to that red shuka and just move out of the way of the Maasai as they come along. So there's an easy balance and equilibrium between the dangerous animals out here and a Maasai warrior wearing his red shuka, and the colors have just become more vibrant as dyeing technology and dyes have become that much better than just rubbing red ochre clay into your clothes. Right, Senzo has seen some movement here. Maybe we're lucky and we get a head sticking up from our lions. No luck yet. These lions are still flat and will probably stay that way until way after. There we go. We got just a head. There you go. For those of you who are very quick, that was a lion. Alright, we're going to be sending you down to Tristan, who's busy driving along in the golden sunlight of that winter sunset at Djuma.
I am indeed, Stef. It is a beautiful afternoon, actually. The wind is starting to simmer down a little bit, and it really is very pleasant. And finally, we've kind of come across something that piques my interest a little bit. Now, these look like tracks for Tundi that have come into this area, which is quite interesting. I'm just trying to see how fresh they are, but if I show you over here, this is probably the best one that I can show you because there's a bit of light on it. So we can see that it's a female just by the size of it. It is quite small in relation to the male's tracks. The males would be a lot bigger than what we see there. We can also see that it is quite long in comparison to its width. So if we have a look at that, that's the length of it, whereas the width is very, very short. It's much shorter at that distance there. So these are quite small, which is typical of Tundi's tracks. Now, I was trying to just have a look and see if there's other animals that are on top, because it's walked just on the fringe of the road here, and so it's difficult to see what's going on. But these are the only tracks that I've found today that I can potentially look at, and I wanted to see if the genets were on top, because there's a genet that's walked here, and it seems like these potentially are on top of those. But if it's not, well, it's worth just going for a little quick check. I was on my way to Chitwa Dam to go and try and see if there was any sign at Chitwa Dam of Ellies or, well, Vlad the crocodile or any of that. But I think let's just give these a bash and see how they go. They don't look to me as though they were done this afternoon. They look like they were from this morning or last night. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and one never knows. You can be tracking these along, and this Tundi might have made a kill here somewhere, and we can then find them. But it seems like somebody drove over these tracks this morning, so they're not as fresh as I was hoping for. Now I wonder who drove here, because what are we? We're on Battalier, so there was quite a number of vehicles going up and down here, but I'll just drive along a little bit and check and see. Maybe, just maybe, we get lucky and she's somewhere around. But they've definitely been driven over by somebody. You can see they're not in the tread pattern at all, which means that these tracks were from probably last night. But it's worth having a look and worth just trying our very best. Maybe Tundi is somewhere in this area. We know she can be elusive. It's this time of the day though that leopards will start moving. So if she has come in to come and fetch Tumba, maybe they'll then start moving now, and we'll be able to get lucky and find some sort of sign of the two of them moving around in this area. Don't see those tracks anymore. It's quite difficult from where I'm sitting now. They are small tracks, and unless you kind of come right up against them, it's going to be tough to see them. But I think I spotted them again now. Also, when a car is driven over them, it's not easy to see exactly where they go. I'll just quickly check this junction. Now the reason why I say Tundi and no other leopard is because, well, Tundi's the only female that spends time here, so her tracks cut up just up onto this side, and I want to check if she doesn't come back. No, so she looks like she goes northwards up here. Let's see, where do your tracks go, little girl? I'm trying to find where her footprint is. There it is. So it's going northwards up here, and I wonder if it's going to take a turn down onto Battalier. So that was actually, we were on Mamba Road there. So I wonder, where have you gone, Tundi? It's a difficult area to be tracking leopard in. I'm hoping, can you imagine if she was sitting in one of these golden lit marulas? That would be ideal. I would love to see her and Tumba in a tree together. I've unfortunately never seen the two of them up in the same tree and really sitting and having a good time together. So I would love to see her up on the top of a big marula with golden light and that beautiful Tumba together, because both of those leopards have quite gold coats, and in this light it would just be fantastic to see them. So hopefully that's going to be the case.